Chapter 61. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hearing Minato say this, the system elf's heart was slightly shaken, then he said, "Really?" Minato turned around and looked at the girl with golden hair and golden eyes in front of him. He felt a little unbelievable that his system master was a girl. Although he had seen it before, he had never looked at it so carefully. Looking at the question of the system elf in front of him, Minato smiled slightly and said, "Of course it is true, but I believe that day will never come, right?" The system elf nodded fiercely and said, "That day will definitely not come. By the way, system elf, I heard you say just now that you have another host, right?" At this point, the system elf nodded slightly, showing a vicious expression on his face and said, "That guy actually wants to devour my system origin." Minato was a little confused when he heard it. Then the system elf shook his head and said, "Because the system contains huge power, otherwise it would not have produced so many system rewards." Minato nodded slightly and said, "That's true, but," then he continued, "Has that guy seen you like this?" The system elf heard. "No, I hadn't condensed the power of my body at that time, so he hadn't seen me like this." Then Minato said to the system, "It's time for me to leave." As he was about to leave, the voice of the system elf sounded again. "The reason why Uzumaki Naruto is like this is because you used the black coffin of the ghost in the sealed space in Naruto's body, causing that consciousness to be unable to withstand the power of the black tube, so it will die. So he behaved like this, and it can be said that this is the real him." Minato nodded slightly, smiled and waved to the system elf, and then his consciousness returned to reality. Of course, after being in the system space for so long, only a few seconds had passed in the outside world. The system elf looked at the disappearing Minato and murmured, "Don't worry. I will always be with you." At this time, a sweet voice like an oriole sounded in Minato's ears, "Brother Minato, what's wrong with you?" Minato looked up and saw Rukia's beautiful eyes looking at him curiously. Jiraiya also had a puzzled look on his face. At this time, Naruto, who was eating a big meal beside him, suddenly looked at his father and said, "What's wrong with you, Dad? Is being a Hokage too tiring?" Looking at his cheap son who still knew how to care about his old father, Minato smiled with relief. Seeing this, Minato said, "If it tastes good, eat more." Naruto on the side started to cry while eating, and Minato was a little confused when he heard it. "What's wrong, Naruto? Why are you crying?" "It's great that Dad can be resurrected, otherwise I would still be the monster of the demon fox in everyone's mouth. Because of your return, I am now the son of Hokage." Perhaps because he merged with the original Minato's soul, Minato felt a little uncomfortable when he saw Naruto crying while eating. Then Minato looked at Naruto opposite and said seriously, "Naruto, do you hate the poor people of Konoha?" Naruto shook his head at first, then nodded and said, "I didn't hate them before, but now as long as they don't call me a demon fox anymore, I won't hurt them." Rukia and Jiraiya on the side were a little confused, wondering what the father and son were talking about. Minato heard Naruto say this. He also knew that it was probably the number 90 Kido black coffin that he used in the sealed space that wiped out Ashura's consciousness that was lodged in Naruto's sea of consciousness. After all, the system also said that it was not. Then Minato looked at Rukia who was eating a small bite and said, "You didn't encounter any danger on the way to the daimyo mansion this time?" Rukia looked up and looked at Minato with her beautiful eyes and said, "There was no danger, but on the way back, I met 2 strange people." Then Rukia added, "They were both wearing high-collared red cloud black robes. I heard from Kurenai that one of them was an S-level rebel ninja in Konoha named Uchiha Itachi. The other one had blue skin and a mouthful of teeth like a hacksaw. Kurenai didn't tell me what this one was called." At this time, Jiraiya, who was silent on the side, slowly said, "They are 2 members of the Akatsuki organization. When I was traveling in the ninja world a few years ago, I have heard rumors about them." Looking at Rukia, he said, "Which blue-skinned shark-faced one are you talking about?" "If I guess correctly, it should be Hoshigaki, the S-rank rebel ninja from the hidden mist village who is known as the tailed beast without a tail, Kisame." Jiraiya said to the 3 people. Namikaze Minato was surprised and said, "Teacher Jiraiya, do you know these things? Jiraiya laughed. Of course I have been collecting materials outside for so many years, so of course I have heard some unknown secrets. At this time, Naruto, who was eating on the side, couldn't help but ask when he heard Jiraiya say the word secret. What secret? Jiraiya saw Naruto asking and hurriedly said, go away, it's adults' business, children should not ask. Naruto pouted and said, if you don't want to say it, then don't say it. It's still mysterious, because only Jiraiya knows what secret it is. Isn't it just a comic book written by himself? Because there is a beautiful girl here. Jiraiya didn't say it clearly. After dinner, Jiraiya said goodbye to Minato and others and left. Naruto looked at his father and then at Rukia and said, Dad, Rukia, I'm leaving now. I won't bother you anymore. Just as he was about to leave, Minato called Naruto and said, he'll give you this and he'll arrange a place for you to stay. Naruto didn't refuse and looked at Minato with the token, feeling a little touched, then he walked out of the house and disappeared after a few jumps. Minato looked at Naruto and walked back into the house, sitting on the sofa in the living room, thinking about the next arrangements. He suddenly thought of the promise to help Kakashi improve his strength, but he hasn't done it yet. Suddenly he thought of saving a Mangekyo Sharingan in his system space. After all, this eye contains one of the 3 ultimate illusions in the Naruto world. It can change a person's mind permanently. If Kakashi wants to transplant another Sharingan, he must have Hashirama cells. After all, Hashirama cells can quickly restore chakra and heal injuries. In addition, the biggest benefit is that the amount of chakra increases several times. However, this matter still needs to be carefully considered. After all, not everyone is as lucky as Yamato. Once the body cannot withstand the backlash of Hashirama's cells, it may die directly. Whether to transplant this Mangekyo Sharingan depends on Kakashi himself. After all, there is a certain risk. The person who will perform the surgery is Orochimaru, the future ninja scientist. At this time, Rukia slowly came over and rode on Minato's legs face to face. Looking at the girl's beautiful rosy face and shiny cherry mouth in front of Minato, Minato couldn't help it anymore and kissed her directly. While his hands slowly wandered on Rukia's body, Minato put his hands on Rukia's round buttocks, and at the same time, he stood up and hugged Rukia into the room. Soon, the sound of a rocking bed came from the room, but this sound lasted for 6 or 7 hours before slowly disappearing. Chapter 62. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The next morning, Minato felt a soft touch on his palm in a daze, and subconsciously pinched it with his hand. He heard a woman's moaning sound next to him, and then he realized that he had let himself go too much yesterday. He couldn't control himself. Besides, men, food, sex and nature. Then Minato saw a beautiful and delicate face with a blush that had not yet dissipated after the passion. Seeing this scene, Minato kissed her again, and then put his hands on the fullness of Rukia's chest. After feeling it carefully, he was surprised to find that it was a little bigger than before. If it was B-level before, it is now at least close to C-level. It seems that doing this kind of thing is still good for women. Just when Minato wanted to get straight to the point, he realized that the two of them seemed a little too crazy yesterday. Because Minato saw the mess in the room, Rukia felt that Minato's hand touching her body stopped, and she couldn't help but feel a little confused. Then after the two kissed, the blush on Rukia's little face was red all the way to her ears. Minato smiled and patted Rukia's elastic buttocks, and then said, "Let's stop here today. Doing too much is not good for the body." After hearing Minato say this, Rukia took a look inside the room and saw a mess in her eyes. Suddenly, her little face was red and cute, immediately realized that she was now naked in front of Minato, and quickly pulled up the quilt to block in front of her. Minato was speechless when he saw this, and couldn't help but complain in his heart. Both of them had an in-depth exchange of knowing each other's strengths and weaknesses. But he still didn't say anything. I know girls are thin-skinned and easily shy. So he put on his clothes and walked out. I don't know why, ****. Minato, who had just walked out of the room, subconsciously touched his waist. After all, the 8 hours of high-intensity battle last night, except for changing a few postures, almost never stopped. It took a long time for Rukia to come out of the room, but she was wearing a blue long skirt, which made Rukia look more dignified and less immature. Not long after the two had breakfast, they came to the Hokage's office and saw the purple-haired beauty Yuzuki Yugao and her student Hitaki Wuwu who had been waiting there. When the two saw Namikaze Minato, they saluted and said, "Lord Hokage." Minato nodded slightly and motioned Kakashi to come in. The reason why Minato didn't dare to talk to Mao Yu Shiyen was that he was afraid that Mao Yu Shiyen would be like Shiyuhi Kurenai yesterday. Kakashi then said to Lord Hokage, "Don't I need to continue teaching Naruto?" Minato nodded and said, "I have asked Jiraiya teacher for Naruto." Kakashi was stunned at first, but then he reacted. "That's good." Kakashi has also heard about how strong Jiraiya's teacher is. After all, he is also one of the three ninjas, much stronger than himself, an elite jonin. Then Minato seemed to remember something and said, "By the way, Kakashi and I will go to a place to meet someone today." Kakashi had some doubts in his heart, but he didn't ask, because Kakashi knew that the teacher didn't tell him. It should be because the teacher had his own considerations. "Yes, Lord Hokage." Then Minato looked at Kakashi and said, "Kakashi, just call me teacher in private from now on. After all, there are no outsiders here." Kakashi was moved when he heard this, and secretly swore that he would never allow others to destroy this beauty. If anyone dared to hurt his teacher, he would never forgive him as a disciple. However, Minato didn't know what Kakashi was thinking, and Kakashi didn't intend to tell his teacher. He just had to quietly complete the tasks assigned by the teacher. In fact, it was not surprising that Kakashi had such an idea, because when Kakashi was 8 years old, his father chose to commit suicide because he couldn't stand the sarcasm of the common people in Konoha, leaving him young. At that time, Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, who were only 16 years old, often came to visit him and take care of his life, just like his father and mother. In the end, Minato Namikaze became his teacher, but he has been living in guilt and self-blame because of the death of Obito and Rin. He did not get out of the shadow until his teacher and his mistress died on the night of the Nine Tails, and he knew that Naruto was his teacher's child, but he still did not take care of Naruto. Knowing that Naruto could not eat enough, he also did not give Naruto a penny. He felt sorry for Minato and even more sorry for Kushina. Then Minato smiled and said, "In that case, let's go." Seeing this, Rukia nodded slightly. Her beautiful face was full of smiles, and she hugged Minato's arm directly. Kakashi was a little surprised by this scene alone. Although he had long guessed that the relationship between this girl and the teacher was unusual, it was still a little incredible to see it with his own eyes. But then he thought that although his teacher had died for so many years, his body was still in his 20s, and some physiological needs were normal. Minato saw Kakashi still standing there in a daze, and couldn't help but urge him, "Come quickly." Kakashi reacted and hurried over. Minato used chakra to feel the flying thunder god. Vertical style he left on Orochimaru, found it, and the next moment Minato and Rukia appeared directly in front of a cave outside Konoha village. The two were a little confused when they saw this scene, and didn't understand why Minato ran here and what he was doing. Then they saw Minato walk into the cave, and the two hurried to follow. Minato walked to a stone door, fumbled for a while, and soon a snake-shaped mechanism popped out. Only then did the two see that the original stone wall actually moved. A passage was revealed. Minato breathed a sigh of relief when he saw the passage. It seemed that Orochimaru's mechanism was still the same as described in the anime. Minato said to the two of them, "Let's go," that the two of them didn't say anything and followed Minato silently. At this time, two hidden weapons flew in front of them. Kakashi saw this scene and drew out the white long sword on his back without saying a word, blocking all the kunai that came. Minato was a little surprised to see this scene and said, "Kakashi, what are you doing?" Kakashi heard a sad look on his face, and then said, "This is my father's weapon, the white fan blade. Teacher, I want to inherit my father's swordsmanship, and I don't want Hitachi swordsmanship to decline." Minato nodded slightly when he heard this, and he understood what Kakashi meant. Then he said, "Your father is a great ninja. Such a hero, his legacy should not be cut off." Then he saw a slender figure with short white hair, a pale face, purple eyes, and the most unforgettable thing was that this guy had a mouthful of jagged teeth. Then he saw a man and a woman appear one after another. They were the members of the Hawk Squad in the original work, and the survivors of the Uzumaki clan, Uzumaki Karen and Yugo. Kakashi looked gloomy when he saw the two people appear, because he could feel that the female ninja had no power, and the key was that the orange-haired guy actually made him feel the breath of danger. Chapter 63. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Minato stepped forward and patted Kakashi on the shoulder, signaling him to leave. Kakashi took 2 steps back, and Rukia looked at them. Minato stepped forward and said, I am the 4th Hokage of Konoha village, Minato Namikaze, and I have something to do with Orochimaru. The two were shocked and quickly took a defensive posture. Minato continued, I came to see your lord Orochimaru for my disciple. So you'd better inform him. Uzumaki Karen on the side suddenly said, okay. Lord Hokage, please follow me. Uzumaki Karen on the side didn't know what was going on, and suddenly felt hot all over, especially when she really saw the handsome and masculine face of the 4th Hokage Minato Namikaze for the first time. Suddenly, she felt her heart beat a little faster. Although he is handsome, it's the first time she has seen him. It shouldn't be love at first sight. What Karen didn't know was that Minato was a man with a bug. Not to mention a crazy girl like him. Even a cold and beautiful girl like Konan would be moved when she saw Minato. Seeing this, Yugo and Mizuki on the side hurriedly said, Karen, if you do this, Lord Orochimaru will be angry. Uzumaki Karen glanced at the two and said, I don't know if Lord Orochimaru will be angry, but if we stop them, we may die. Then she ignored the two and turned to Minato and said, Hokage, please follow me. Minato nodded slightly and said, thank you. Then Minato and the other two followed Uzumaki Karen into a huge laboratory, which was filled with various experimental props, such as the Uchiha clan's Sharingan, from 1 to 3 Magatama Sharingan. Seeing this, Rukia felt a little curious and said, I feel that this Orochimaru you are talking about is similar to the captain of the 12th division of the Godai 13, Mayuri Kuratsuchi. Minato said it yes. After all, Orochimaru is a scientist in the ninja world. The 3 people on the side were shocked when they heard this. Is Orochimaru so powerful? Looking at the shocked eyes of the 3 people, Minato chuckled and said, you will know later. At this time, Orochimaru's cold voice sounded, didn't I say? No one is allowed to come in without my order. Uzumaki Karen knelt on the ground in fear and said, Lord Orochimaru, calm down. Seeing this scene, Minato said directly, Orochimaru, I came to see you for something, come out and see you. When Orochimaru heard the voice, Minato was a little scared. After all, Namikaze Minato was a ruthless man. Killing the 3rd generation, destroying Danzo, and then exterminating the clan later, all showed that this guy was not only powerful to the point of abnormal strength, but also a lunatic. Orochimaru didn't dare to provoke him, not to mention that he was very curious about the special power of Minato Namikaze. His intuition told him that the power of Minato might contain the secret of immortality. If Minato allowed him to study his body, he might not have to use the immortal reincarnation technique anymore. After all, the immortal reincarnation technique would cause too much damage to his soul. Then a white snake more than 10 meters long appeared on the ground. Kakashi looked alert, and Rukia beside him was a little curious, because there were never so many strange things in her world. Then the snake slowly opened its mouth, and Orochimaru slowly crawled out of the snake's mouth. Seeing this, Rukia frowned slightly and said, Brother Minato, is this also a ninjutsu? Minato nodded slightly and said, of course, this is his signature ninjutsu. Orochimaru, who was covered with snake saliva, stood up slowly, his body filled with chakra, and soon all the saliva on Orochimaru's body evaporated. Orochimaru looked at the woman standing next to Minato curiously, feeling a little strange. Because he didn't feel any chakra from this woman, but Orochimaru would never think that this woman was an ordinary person, because Minato was the 4th generation Hokage. Then, a trace of vigilance was revealed in Orochimaru's golden snake pupils. Minato noticed it, but he didn't care and said slowly. I came to you today for 2 things. The first thing is that I want you to help me improve Kakashi's strength. Orochimaru was a little surprised, so he said, Minato, with your strength, it should be easy to teach Kakashi. Minato shook his head and said, I really don't have anything to ask him. You know that the Rasengan consumes more chakra, and Kakashi can do it himself, and the difficulty of flying Thunder God is not as high as you think. Yes, I know. Orochimaru pondered for a moment and said, so you want me to conduct human experiments on Kakashi? Minato nodded slightly. But of course I still have to ask Kakashi what he thinks. Minato turned around and looked at Kakashi and said, what do you think? Kakashi hesitated for a moment and gritted his teeth and said, as long as I can become stronger, it's fine. At this time, Orochimaru's hoarse voice sounded, Kakashi's success rate is less than 50%, and if he fails, he may lose his life. At this time, Minato's voice sounded on the side. Kakashi, the first one is that if you dig out Obito's Sharingan, you will have a lot more chakra, and you will no longer have the problem of insufficient chakra. You can specialize in your father's Hatake swordsmanship, but your strength will stop at this level, at most reaching the level of a Kage-level strongman. You are not from the Uchiha clan, you don't have the blood of the Uchiha clan, so you can't close your Sharingan, causing your chakra to keep losing. At the second way is to let Orochimaru transplant the cells of the first generation of Hokage into you, so that your Sharingan may be able to open the Mangekyo Sharingan. So have you decided? Kakashi looked at Minato with a firm look without hesitation and said to Minato and Orochimaru, please. The two looked at each other and understood what Kakashi meant. At this time, Rukia saw this and showed a worried look in her purple eyes. Although Rukia had just arrived in this world for a few days and had not communicated with Kakashi and others, since she gave her body to Minato yesterday, Minato's figure was in her heart. So Kakashi was Minato's disciple, and she was also Kakashi's master's wife. Naturally, she didn't want Kakashi to get into trouble. Minato sensed Rukia's uneasiness and reached out to hold her soft, white jade hand, signaling her not to worry. At this time, the electronic sound of the system came from his mind. Ding found a sign-in location. Do you want to sign in? Sign in. Minato's somewhat flat voice sounded. Ding, congratulations to the host for signing in successfully and obtaining a can of Uchiha Madara's blood, which has now been stored in the system space. Minato called out to the system elf in his mind, System elf, and saw no response. This time, Minato's consciousness did not enter the system space. Did he know that the system elf might be dormant again? Chapter 65. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Suddenly, Minato remembered the blood of Uchiha Madara that he had obtained when he signed in at Orochimaru's base today. Can it be injected into Kakashi? In this way, wouldn't Kakashi have the blood of the Uchiha clan? The more Minato thought about it, the more feasible it was. After all, when he watched the Naruto anime in his previous life, after Orochimaru was killed by Uchiha Sasuke, Orochimaru's assistant Kabuto Yakushi, he extracted the blood of Orochimaru's original body, the white phosphorus snake, and injected it into his body, and also gained some of Orochimaru's power. I remember that later he cultivated the sage mode of Ryuchi Cave, and his strength reached the ranks of Kage-level strongmen. What about Uchiha Madara's blood? By the way, can Uchiha Shirsui's Mangekyo Sharingan also be injected into Kakashi? In this way, will Kakashi's strength get a qualitative leap, and may even become comparable to Tendo Pain? That's a super Kage-level power. Namikaze. Minato waved to the system elf and disappeared. The system elf smiled helplessly at this scene, turned around and went to sleep. Orochimaru looked at Minato with a serious face and said, what should we do now? If this continues, Kakashi may not be able to survive. Minato came to his senses and took out a bottle of blood from the system space and handed it to Orochimaru. Orochimaru did not hesitate to take the bottle and said, Orochimaru, give Kakashi a quick injection. Seeing this, Kabuto, the pharmacist, took it quickly. After injecting Kakashi, Uzumaki Karen carefully wiped the sweat from Kakashi's head due to excessive pain. Minato was a little surprised when he saw this scene, and then thought that Uzumaki Karen liked handsome guys, and now seeing Kakashi, a handsome guy, it was natural for her to like him. But what is curious is that Uzumaki Karen, who was looking at him with an obsessed look just now, has now returned to normal. Could it be that the women's friend is ineffective for women who are obsessed with love? But it's okay this way. After all, he can't stand too many women. As Uchiha Madara's blood was slowly injected into Kakashi's body, Kakashi's originally painful and hideous face became calm, and the blood-red lines on his body no longer appeared. His breathing also became stable, and his body stopped struggling. Seeing this scene, several people in the laboratory were relieved. Orochimaru wiped the sweat from his head. He didn't know if he was nervous or what. Even when fighting with a Kage-level strongman, he didn't sweat so much. At this time, Orochimaru looked over with curiosity. Kabuto Yakushi and Uzumaki Karen also showed curiosity when they saw this. They were very curious. They didn't know how Minato knew to use the blood of the Uchiha clan to suppress the rioting Hashirama cells in his body. Minato knew he had to say something, so he looked serious and started to fool around. How I was resurrected some time ago, Orochimaru, you know best, right? Orochimaru complained in his heart, what do you mean I know best? I am the one who knows least. At that time, it was not you who was resurrected by the impure world reincarnation, but the fourth Kazekage Raza of the Sand Village. God knows how you resurrected, but on the surface, he still said, yes, Minato was resurrected because of my impure world reincarnation. Orochimaru would never admit that he was a coward. He was afraid that Minato would destroy his base. This base contained his collections over the years, and there were several pairs of 3 Magatama Sharingan. The two nodded slightly when they heard the words, and they admired Orochimaru even more in their hearts. Look, this is Lord Orochimaru, who can even resurrect the 4th Hokage Golden Flash Namikaze Minato, so who else is there besides Lord Orochimaru? At this time, Orochimaru, who looked like he had lost all hope in life, could not help but sigh slightly when he saw the two people's admiring eyes. What the two people didn't know was that if Orochimaru knew their thoughts, he would definitely give each of them a big bite. Minato saw Orochimaru's cooperation and nodded. In hell, I not only saw the dead Uchiha clan, but also the legendary ninja world Shura Uchiha Madara, and he also told me where his blood was hidden. Orochimaru nodded slightly and continued, so, what you know about the balance of yin and yang is what Uchiha Madara told you. Minato nodded without blushing and admitted that it was all told to him by Uchiha Madara. In his heart, Madara-sama, please don't blame me for dying for my friend, and besides, your clan was exterminated by Uchiha Itachi, the filial son, only Uchiha Sasuke is left among the tribe. Now your Uchiha clan has one more survivor, and he is your direct bloodline. I wonder if you will be very happy if you know this. Hatake Kakashi, oh, no, now he should be called Uchiha Kakashi, in a place in hell. A handsome and cold-faced middle-aged man sneezed and couldn't help but mutter to himself, I don't know who missed me. This man is Uchiha Madara, who is known as the dance king of the ninja world. After coming to his senses, Namikaze Minato took out a glass bottle with nutrient solution from the system space, which was full of nutrient solution. If you look closely, you will find that there is an eye with a four-cornered shuriken logo inside. This eye is the eye obtained from Shimura Danzo, Uchiha Shirsue's Mangekyo Sharingan. When Orochimaru saw it, he exclaimed, Mangekyo Sharingan. Minato nodded and said, hurry up and install it on Kaka. Orochimaru nodded slightly, and then began to transplant the eyes, showing the optic nerve connecting the brain and the eyes, and then began to clean up the mess. Minato smiled and asked when he saw Kakashi hadn't woken up yet. Orochimaru, why hasn't Kakashi woken up yet? Orochimaru smiled on his pale face and said slowly, don't worry, Kakashi is just a little tired today, just take a night's rest. Minato was thinking about sending Kakashi home when a girl came over. Hokage-sama, Orochimaru-sama, I can send Kaka home. Minato was a little surprised when he heard it, then he smiled warmly as if he had thought of something. Then Minato looked at Orochimaru, who understood something and nodded, saying, go. At this time, Minato looked at Orochimaru and said, Orochimaru, I want to invite you to join the newly established Scientific Research Department of Konoha. I wonder what you think about it. Orochimaru pondered for a moment after hearing this and said, who was in charge of me in the past? Of course I was in charge, but I won't restrict your personal freedom. Minato looked at Orochimaru and said. Orochimaru smiled grimly after hearing this. Chapter 66. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Minato smiled and said, welcome back, Orochimaru. While speaking, Minato also extended a hand. Orochimaru was a little surprised that Minato would invite him in this way, and he also extended a hand and held it together with Namikaze Minato's hand. Both of them smiled like foxes, and each of them had their own little calculations in their hearts. Time flies, and a week has passed in the blink of an eye. Minato looked at himself and saw that he had no place to sign in these few days, and he couldn't help frowning and thinking. Minato was thinking about the next sign-in route and personnel in the Hokage's office. At this time, the door of the Hokage's office was knocked. Minato was a little surprised. He didn't understand who came to the Hokage's office to find him so early, so he cleared his throat and said, "Come in." A young man with white hair rising to the sky and a forehead protector on his forehead walked in, but what was strange was that the young man was wearing a mask, revealing only a pair of determined eyes. This person was none other than the chakra measurement unit, Hatake Kakashi. After Kakashi came in, he bowed to Minato and said, "Minato teacher, thank you very much. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been able to gain such a powerful force." Minato smiled slightly and waved his hand and said, "By the way, how do you feel now?" Minato was very curious about Kakashi and wanted to know how strong Kakashi was now. Of course, he was definitely still not as strong as himself. How strong is Kakashi, who has transplanted Hashirama's cells and Uchiha Madara's blood? I almost forgot that there is also Uchiha Shirsue's Mangekyo Sharingan. Kakashi was a little excited when he heard this and said, "Minato teacher, I feel that the chakra in my body is more than dozens of times more than before. I feel that the three Magatama Sharingan now is much clearer than I used to see." Kakashi's dark eyes instantly turned into scarlet three Magatama Sharingan, and Minato looked at the three Magatama Sharingan in Kakashi's eyes. I fell into deep thought. I remember that when I read the original novel, Uchiha Obito's three Magatama Sharingan was almost never closed. Can't the Sharingan be closed? Just kidding, Uchiha Obito is a real Uchiha clan. How could he not be able to close the Sharingan? The only explanation is that because of Hashirama's cells, Uchiha Obito has a huge amount of chakra in his body that is not inferior to the tailed beasts. In this case, the consumption of Uchiha Obito to open the three Magatama Sharingan can be almost ignored. Besides, Hashirama's cells have strong recovery and self-healing abilities. I remember that in the original novel, Obito was killed by the original body on the night of the nine-tailed fox 13 years ago, and his lower body was broken. He relied on his tenacious willpower and strong vitality. Of course, all this depends on the recovery and self-healing ability of Hashirama's cells. Otherwise Obito might have died, then he could return to Uchiha Madara's lair. After Obito and White Zetsu merged, he healed all the injuries in his body in just a moment, and his lower body was restored to its original state. Then he asked Kakashi, "Do you have any rejection reaction or discomfort when you open the three Magatama Sharingan now?" Kakashi thought about it, shook his head and said, "Nothing is abnormal. I feel that I am in a good state now. My chakra has increased by at least dozens of times." Namikaze Minato thought about it and said, "Then can you open the Mangekyo Sharingan?" Kakashi shook his head slightly and said, "I can try it." Then I saw the three Magatama in Kakashi's eyes spinning wildly. Soon, Kakashi's eyes turned into the legendary Mangekyo Sharingan. I saw that the Mangekyo Sharingan in Kakashi's left eye was in the shape of a sickle. This one was very familiar to Namikaze Minato. This was Uchiha Obito's Mangekyo Sharingan. The other one was in the shape of a four-cornered shuriken. Namikaze Minato nodded slightly when he saw this scene. Everything was within his expectations. After all, one is Uchiha Obito's eye, and the other is Uchiha Shirsue's eye. It's normal that they are different. Namikaze Minato remembered that when he watched the Naruto anime in his previous life, he remembered that each Mangekyo Sharingan had a unique pupil technique. I wonder if the pupil techniques in Kakashi's two eyes are the strongest illusion technique Koto Amatsukami and Space Ninjutsu Kamui. By the way, Kakashi, do you have any pupil techniques in these two eyes? Kakashi nodded slightly when he heard this and said, "The pupil technique of the left eye teaches the light of Koto Amatsukami, and the right eye seems to be a space-time ninjutsu kamui." Minato showed a look of realization when he heard this, which was the same as what he guessed. Then it was time for you to open the Mangekyo Sharingan now. Do you feel anything wrong with your body? Kakashi heard Yen shook his head slightly. There was nothing abnormal except that the chakra was consumed a little faster. Minato nodded slightly when he heard it. That's good. Remember that although you have the support of Hashirama cells and Uchiha Madara's blood, you can't use the Mangekyo Sharingan excessively, otherwise you will go blind. There is just one thing that Minato didn't say. In fact, with the support of Hashirama cells and Uchiha blood, as long as you don't use the Uchiha clan's divine power Susanoo, there will be no problem at all. The reason why Minato didn't say it was because he was afraid that Kakashi would be proud and complacent, because Minato was afraid that Kakashi would be infected with the Uchiha clan's genetic disease Uchiha's laughter, but this possibility is not ruled out. On the other hand, Minato also hopes that Kakashi can inherit Tsukumo's Hatake swordsmanship, so that Kakashi's strength can definitely reach the Super Shadow level. Didn't you see that Obito always had the 3 Magatama Sharingan when watching the Naruto anime in the previous life? In another dark cave, a masked man wearing a black robe with red clouds sat on a stone chair. Suddenly, a white humanoid creature appeared beside him and said, "What does it feel like when Obito poops?" Obito's face under the mask twitched slightly when he heard this. He replied indifferently. "How many times have I told you to call me Uchiha Madara? By the way, is Black Zetsu back?" White Zetsu's face scratched his head and said that it seemed that he hadn't. At this time, a man wearing a black robe with red clouds and a full Akatsuki uniform appeared on the ground and appeared in front of Obito. Something big has happened to Obito. The Golden Flash Namikaze Minato has really resurrected. Obito stopped Black Zetsu's report. His face under the mask was as black as the bottom of a pot, but he remained calm on the surface and said, "Is that all?" Obito wanted to curse when he heard this. How could he not know whether Namikaze Minato was resurrected or not? Now the whole ninja world is full of the news that Namikaze Minato has resurrected and returned, and that he killed the third Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen and Shimura Danzo. What should we do next? Black Zetsu asked. Also, Nagato summoned us and said that he had something important to say. Obito made a gesture with his eyes. As Uchiha Obito's old partner, White Zetsu knew what Obito wanted to do, so he went straight into Uchiha Obito's body and merged with Uchiha Obito. Then Uchiha Obito's voice suddenly changed to another person. "Remember, call me Madara-sama outside, and I am Uchiha Madara in front of Nagato and his people." Black Zetsu cooperated and called Madara-sama, and Obito nodded with satisfaction. A whirlpool appeared around him and he disappeared. On a high tower in Rain Village, 8 guys in Akatsuki uniforms were standing there. A young man with long yellow hair covering his eyes said to the red-haired boy beside him, "Kai, what do you think the leader wants us to do?" Chapter 67. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The red-haired boy on the side glanced at him and nodded slightly, indicating that he didn't know either. At this time, a frivolous voice came from a distance. It seems that I am not late." No one paid attention to what Uchiha Obito said when they heard it. Seeing this, Deidara said, "Newcomers don't have to pay attention to these guys. They are just a bunch of rabble." Kakuzu on the side glanced at Deidara with a pair of green eyes, and Fadewan licked his tongue at Deidara, and the meaning was self-evident. At this time, a slender man in a black-red cloud robe and a short light purple bun with a paper flower on his head, with a delicate and cold face, was a real beauty. These two people were Pain and Conan. When everyone saw the arrival of Tendo Pain, they stopped talking and waited for their leader to speak. Seeing this, Tendo Pain's pair of purple eyes with circles slowly swept over everyone present. The rest of the people turned their heads and looked away unconsciously, because the purple eyes were the legendary Six Paths Sage Otsutsuki Hagoromo's sage eyes, also known as the Samsara eyes. I think everyone should have known about the resurrection of Minato Namikaze, right? For this, I decided to put aside our plan to capture the tailed beasts for the time being. According to the intelligence, Minato Namikaze was able to kill Sarutobi Hiruzen and Shimura Danzo, the 2 third-generation Hokage and root leaders of Konoha village, by himself. His strength must not be underestimated. Tendo Pain's pair of samsara eyes glanced at everyone and said, everyone was slightly stunned when they heard this, and then Deidara reacted and said with some dissatisfaction. Didn't he just kill 2 old guys? The Red Sand Scorpion and others agreed with Deidara's opinion when they heard this, and believed that the reason why Minato was so powerful was all exaggerated by others. Kakuzu and others on the side had very solemn expressions when they heard this. Although Kakuzu had never fought with the Golden Flash Minato, he knew a thing or two about him. It is said that the ninjutsu that Minato is good at is the Rasengan and the S-level ninjutsu Flying Thunder God created by the second generation of Hokage. Uchiha Itachi's face did not change when he heard this, but Hoshigaki Kisame on the side was a little curious. At this time, Afei on the side, that is, Obito suddenly said, I know something about Minato Namikaze. He thought to himself, after all, Minato Namikaze and his wife died indirectly in his hands on the night of the Nine-Tailed Fox 13 years ago. Uchiha Obito's face under the mask showed a slight solemnity. He didn't expect that his teacher Minato Namikaze had died 13 years ago and was resurrected now. He didn't know whether Minato would make trouble for him, but if Minato dared to stop him from collecting the tailed beasts and realizing the Moon Eye plan, he didn't mind killing Minato Namikaze again. What he didn't know was that, let alone Minato Namikaze, because of Minato's appearance, Kakashi had made a qualitative leap in both strength and character. If Obito dared to attack Minato, Kakashi wouldn't mind teaching Obito what it meant to respect his teacher. Everyone looked at Afei, waiting for him to continue. Seeing this, Afei no longer hesitated and said directly, I found information about Minato Namikaze when I was on a mission. It is said that his best skill is the S-level ninjutsu Flying Thunder God Jutsu created by the second-generation Hokage of Konoha Village, Tobarama Senju. With his self-created A-level ninjutsu Rasengan, he is invincible. And the large-scale fire escape ninjutsu he used to kill the third-generation Hokage and the Konoha elders. A hoarse voice sounded. According to what I have learned, Minato Namikaze doesn't seem to know fire-style ninjutsu. Not to mention S-level fire-style ninjutsu, can't a person practice it after death? Then the cold and ruthless voice of Tendo Pain sounded, okay. Hoshigaki Kisame, you and Uchiha Itachi go to the bounty hunter office to announce the bounty for Minato Namikaze's head. Everyone was a little surprised when they heard it, and they didn't understand what the meaning of Tendo Pain was. Even a Kage-level strongman might not be able to kill Minato Namikaze, but it is not ruled out that Kage-level strongmen in other villages would accept the task for the reward of the task. Itachi nodded slightly without any expression when he heard it. Hoshigaki Kisame, who was standing beside him, knew that Uchiha Itachi didn't like to speak, so he hurriedly asked Tendo Pain, where does the money for the bounty come from? Konan came out at this time with a somewhat cold tone. This is 100 million taels. He took out a sealing scroll and threw it to Kisame, who reached out to catch it. Seeing this, Uchiha Itachi turned and left, and Hoshigaki Kisame hurriedly followed him. Minato of Konoha village found Rukia and told her that he was going out for a few days. At first, Rukia disagreed, but with Minato's after a good beating, he compromised and told Minato to be careful. Minato found Kakashi again and told him to pay attention to the alert around Konoha village. Actually, Minato is also helpless. He doesn't want to go out either. But how can he sign in if he doesn't go out? How can he get the system reward if he doesn't sign in? His current strength is not strong enough, because the butterfly effect caused by his own crossing is already enough. Minato didn't want any more accidents to happen. The next day, Minato crawled out of the gentle land, and didn't know why he felt a little sore in the waist and back. Then Minato bought a long sword from the Konoha blacksmith shop and put it on his back, and walked out of Konoha village. Along the way, people from Konoha village greeted Minato after seeing him. Hokage-sama. Fourth Sama. Hokage-sama. Minato could hear the sound of house repairs and the noise of land construction along the way. There was no way he could fight with Shimura Danzo and Sarutobi Hiruzen, as the area affected was a little wide, and even the civilian streets near Konoha village were destroyed. When Minato came to the door, he saw Konoha's two great gate gods, Gangzi Tetsu and Kamatsuki Izumo. The two looked around vigilantly. Suddenly, their eyes lit up. After seeing Namikaze Minato, they hurriedly greeted him, "Hokage-sama." Minato nodded and said, "Thank you for your hard work." Then he disappeared in the confused eyes of the two people. When he appeared again, he was 1,000 meters away. Minato couldn't help but sigh. Is this instant step? It's really good. It takes a week to get there, but Minato arrived in less than a day. When he came to a tavern, Minato put on a mask, took out a black robe from the system space and put it on to cover his golden hair. Although Minato was not afraid of anything, he was also troublesome, right? After all, he came to find a place to sign in, not to make enemies. Minato came to a tavern and sat down slowly, thinking about everything that would happen next, thinking about the next sign-in plan. At this time, a discussion was heard in the tavern. Have you heard? I wonder who is offering a 100 million tael reward for the head of the Golden Flash. With Minato's current strength, Minato heard the conversations of the people at the table next to him very clearly. Minato calmly drank tea and wondered who wanted to kill him. It should be this guy who wanted to test his strength through the wandering ninja. Minato heard a ninja at the table next to him ask, "What do those two guys look like?" Minato stopped drinking tea when he heard this and listened carefully to the words of the wandering ninja. "Hey, don't mention it. Those two guys are not good people at first glance. I didn't even look at them." Minato was a little disappointed when he heard this. The words of the wandering ninja next to him shocked Minato slightly, but I do remember what they wore. They wore black robes with red cloud patterns embroidered on them. Chapter 68. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When Minato heard the words of the wandering ninja at the table next to him, a gloomy look appeared on his face under the mask. He obviously didn't expect that the Akatsuki organization would issue the bounty mission. Then he thought that he didn't seem to have offended the Akatsuki organization. But then he suddenly realized that he was not summoned by Orochimaru through the impure world reincarnation in the original plot. Now he was not only summoned but also resurrected miraculously. He did so many things, killing Sarutobi Hiruzen, destroying Danzo, slaughtering the Sarutobi clan, the Shimura clan, the Mito clan and the Utatane clan, and he didn't hide these things from the outside world. If Uchiha Obito wants to realize the Moon Eye plan, he must trick Uzumaki Nagato into being his pawn, because Uchiha Madara's Samsara Eye is on Nagato. Before Minato traveled through time, I remember that when watching Naruto, the Akatsuki organization also started to capture the tailed beasts at this time. Minato drank the tea in the cup, paid for it, and rushed to the direction pointed by the few people. Soon he arrived at a door the size of an inn, with the words Bounty Hunter Agency written on it. Minato saw this and walked in without hesitation. A person next to him blocked Minato's way. Minato was a little confused when he saw this scene. Before Minato could speak, the ninja next to him said, "Secret code." Minato was a little helpless when he heard this. Didn't those guys tell him that he had to receive secret codes when he came here? So Minato cleared his throat and said, "Become bigger and stronger, and create more glory." Just when Minato was hesitating whether to leave or not, he was just looking around anyway, mainly to see if there was any place to sign in. The ninja guarding the door suddenly said, "Okay, go in." Minato was a little surprised when he heard this. He didn't expect that he was still a European emperor. If he had such luck in his previous life, wouldn't it be great to buy lottery tickets? It seems that he is lucky. When he came to the hall, Minato looked around curiously. The architectural style inside was somewhat similar to that of the Hokage building in Konoha village. Minato walked to the table at the bar. The boss looked at the masked man who suddenly appeared in front of him and was horrified. He didn't even see how the other party came to him. Thinking of this scene, the boss of the bounty office couldn't help but feel a little frightened. If the other party wanted to kill him, he might not be able to withstand a single move in front of the other party. You have the strength of a Jonin. Could it be that the other party is a shadow-level strongman? This is so terrifying. Thinking of this, the boss couldn't help but address Minato with a respectful title, and asked carefully, "This sir? What kind of task do you want to take?" Minato certainly understood the boss's attitude towards him. It was also because he was shocked by the powerful strength he showed just now that he respected him so much. Minato sighed inwardly when he saw this scene. It seems that no matter which world it is, the strong make the rules, and the weak can only obey the rules helplessly. As he said this, the boss took out some personnel information and the amount of the bounty, and finally took out the portrait of the person on whom the bounty was offered. Minato was a little surprised to see this, and then the boss explained to Namikaze, Minato, "We are all small places here. Generally, there are some rebellious ninjas or wandering ninjas here. Ninjas from small countries all take tasks here in exchange for bounties." Minato suddenly remembered that those people took tasks from the bounty hunters. How much money can the bosses of these bounty hunters get? With this idea, Minato asked the boss next to him, "By the way, how do you distribute this bounty?" That the boss knew that Minato might be a big customer, so he explained it to Minato carefully. Soon, Minato nodded slowly and said, "Does it mean that you earn 30% of the commission?" The boss nodded. Minato looked at the bounties of Sarutobi Hiruzen, Shimura Danzo, Mitaman N, and Udatane Koharu on the mission bounty, and he regretted why he burned their bodies with fire at that time. Namikaze Minato looked at the bounty of Sarutobi Hiruzen's 30 million ryo, Shimura Danzo's 30 million ryo, and Mitaman N and Udatane Koharu's bounties. Although the bounties of Sarutobi Hiruzen and Shimura Danzo were 20 million ryo less than the mission bounties of Sarutobi Hiruzen and Shimura Danzo, they were also a huge income. After all, the reward for an S-level ninjutsu is only a few million ryo. Then Minato saw his own portrait, and the bounty on it reached an astonishing 100 million ryo. Minato looked at the amazing numbers on it. That I had a bold idea, which was to make a fake self and hand it in as a task reward. After hearing this, Minato thought about it and gave up. Then Minato had a new idea. If he couldn't beat them, he would join them. Why not join Akatsuki? Would he be afraid of not having the opportunity and place to sign in? Then Minato looked at the drawing paper with himself on it. This was 100 million taels. Akatsuki was really willing to spend a lot of money. Then he pointed to the person in the portrait and said, "Is it okay for me to exchange his body for the bounty?" That although I cursed myself for being unlucky, the bounty reward was too much money. After a while, I asked the system to see if I could make a simulated doll that looked similar to me, the kind that could be mistaken for the real thing. Those people were shocked when they heard this. Who is this guy? Does he know who the person who offered the bounty is? That's Minato Namikaze, the 4th generation Hokage of Konoha. Minato ignored the discussion and turned to leave. The owner of the bounty shop watched Minato disappear, and heaved a sigh of relief and said to himself, "This guy is finally gone." Because according to common sense, such a shadow-level strongman should not come here to accept bounty missions. Minato was not far from the bounty hunter, and suddenly frowned. Because he noticed that someone was following him. It seems that he wants to surround and kill him. The corners of his mouth rose slightly, revealing a warm smile. He thought to himself, "Since you want to die, don't blame me." Then Minato looked around, tightened his black robe, and pretended to look around nervously. Several people couldn't stop their joy when they saw this scene because it might be another 2 or 3 million taels. As long as they killed the guy in front of them, their brothers could get a lot of bounty. Why not? But what they didn't know was that they paid the price of their lives for their greed soon. According to Minato's chakra perception, there were about a dozen people chasing him. Finally, after running for an unknown period of time, Minato felt that he had run enough and stopped by a small river. Seeing this, several people smiled. This guy finally couldn't run anymore. Minato turned around, a smile appeared on his face under the mask, and he slowly said, "Finally, everyone is here." That the reason why Minato ran first and didn't fight with them was to lure them all out and catch them all in one fell swoop. If it weren't for the fact that these guys were not bad enough and should be worth a few million taels, Minato really didn't want to kill them. The 2 leading men rushed towards Minato at a very fast speed. Of course, the faster they went, the faster they died. They saw their bodies slowly separated. They were cut in half by Minato's sword and died. Then the rest of the people saw this and sweat flowed from their foreheads because of nervousness, because the 2 men just now were not the strongest among them. But the strength is also very good. Chapter 69. You are listening at novelfull.audio. But even with such strength, he was killed by the guy in black robe in front of him without even a single move. Then, a big man among the others heard the words and looked at Minato with a gloomy face and said, "Your strength is really strong. The 10 of us will retreat, and these 2 bodies will be given to you, all as our apology to you." Minato looked at the burly big man in surprise, and didn't expect that this guy with thick eyebrows and big eyes could judge the situation. Seeing that he had no advantage, he wanted to ask for peace. "There is no such thing in the world." Minato shook his head slowly and said, "It seems that you haven't figured out one thing yet. Whether it's you or them, they will all die today. Even Jesus can't stop him." "I said it." The big man's face showed anger when he heard the words, and he stopped talking to Minato. He picked up the weapon in his hand and attacked Minato. Seeing this, Minato went straight to the ninja and cut his throat with a knife. The guy's head flew off his body and fell to the ground. He became a headless corpse and fell to the ground. Then I heard the sound of a long knife slashing across the neck. Puff! 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 In a short while, the remaining 7 or 8 wandering ninjas all died in Minato's hands. Minato held the long knife he bought from the blacksmith shop and walked towards the bodies of these ninjas step by step. Blood kept dripping from the knife. The scarlet blood looked particularly weird under the sunlight. Just when Minato was about to pick up the spoils, he suddenly felt a few strange chakras rushing towards him. Minato snorted coldly and extremely powerful chakras suddenly burst out from all around his body. Then Minato clapped his hands and shouted. Water style, water dragon bite explosion. A large amount of magnificent chakra appeared beside Minato, and then Minato's mouth bulged slightly, and then a stream of water spit out from Minato's mouth. In just a blink of an eye, a water dragon more than 10 meters long rushed forward. Everywhere the water dragon passed was torn into pieces, and it was a mess. Seeing this, the ninja who was chasing Minato looked very solemn. Then they saw a huge water dragon biting towards the 2 of them, and they couldn't help but feel a kind of despair in their hearts. Then the 2 looked at each other, gritted their teeth, and saw the 2 of them quickly seal. Earth escape, earth flow wall. Earth escape, earth flow river. I saw a 5-meter-high earth wall rising from the ground blocking the 2 people, and at the same time, a river appeared on the ground that turned the mud into liquid and flowed into a river. The water escape ninjutsu collided with Minato, and in just a blink of an eye, the earth escape ninjutsu used by the wandering ninja disappeared, and the huge water dragon bit the 2 people unstoppably. Puff! I only heard 2 sounds and thought that there were still 2 figures in front of Minato. Seeing this, Minato shook his head slightly, sighed in his heart. It is still faster to kill with weapons. Ninjutsu is too slow, and the opponent is not a fool. Wait for your attack to hit him and then dodge, or choose to fight hard. It's not like what I saw in my previous life, an anime. You use Qigong waves. I can dodge but I won't dodge. I choose to fight hard or fight with you. Don't think that Minato didn't make a seal when using the ninjutsu just now. In fact, it is necessary to make a seal to use that thing. However, if you have a lot of chakra, and you have a perfect grasp of the changes in the nature of chakra, and you have reached a level of meticulous control over chakra, you can choose not to make a seal and release most ninjutsu. The chakra that ninjas usually extract is stored in their own cells. When you use them, you can stabilize and guide the flow of chakra in the cells in your body by making a seal, so that you can use ninjutsu smoothly. Of course, you can also choose not to make a seal, such as Uchiha Madara or Senju Hashirama, who claps his hands and shouts whatever he wants. After Minato solved all the dozens of ninjas who followed him, he only found 3 sea-level ninjutsu scrolls and tens of thousands of taels of banknotes. Minato shook his head slightly when he saw this. It seems that these wandering ninjas are not having a good time either. I just don't know why they don't choose to join the ninja village. Then Minato put the 10 corpses into the ninjutsu scroll. After all, it was too dirty and it was not suitable to put it in his system space. Minato disappeared in a flash. Since he was not far from the bounty office, he quickly reached his destination. After receiving the bounty, Minato planned to return to the border of the Land of Fire. After all, he had been out for several days. although Minato wanted to find the sign-in location, he knew he couldn't rush. The Akatsuki organization knew where it was, but he always you can't just rush in. Minato is not afraid of the two big enemies, Tendo Pain and Uchiha Obito, but mainly afraid of the butterfly effect. Just at the border of the Land of Fire, Namikaze Minato met two old acquaintances, Uchiha Daxiatsu and the honest man Hoshigaki Kisame. Minato was a little surprised to see this, wondering what these two guys were doing here. Namikaze Minato got closer to see Uchiha Itachi's face clearly. This guy is very handsome, with a cold look of an abstinence handsome guy, a flowing hair, and two deep tear grooves on his face, but Minato doesn't have a good impression of this guy. That's a damn thing. Killing your father and mother is something a human can do. Your parents gave you life, raised you up, gave you good food and drink, taught you skills, and everything you have was given by your parents. In the end, not only did you not know how to be grateful, you killed them. That's brain dead. You were fooled by Sarutobi Hiruzen like a fool. You said that you could think like a Hokage at the age of 3. That's because you said this from the perspective of the third Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen. If you said this from the perspective of the Uchiha family, you would see whether Sarutobi Hiruzen and Shimura Danzo would try to kill you. In fact, in Minato's view, Uchiha Fugaku was cowardly and incompetent, and he couldn't bring himself to kill his own son. But it was also human nature. Which father in the world could kill his own son? More of it was disappointment in the village and in his eldest son, whom he had always regarded as proud. What Uchiha Itachi was thinking, Namikaze Minato didn't know, and didn't want to know. For a well-educated young man in his previous life, this is a heartless man, unworthy of being a son. I don't know why so many people like Uchiha Itachi when watching anime in the previous life, but now Minato understands that they like Uchiha Itachi because they are still young and don't have a correct outlook on life. When they grow up, they will no longer like a guy like Uchiha Itachi. Anyway, Minato hates this kind of guy very much. No matter what the reason or excuse is, he shouldn't kill his biological parents. If possible, Minato really wants to kill this guy. Suddenly, Uchiha Itachi turned around, and the three Magatama Sharingan in his eyes turned into a windmill-shaped Mangekyo Sharingan in an instant. Minato suddenly felt dizzy and thought to himself, it's not good to be in an illusion. Chapter 70. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The next second, when Minato opened his eyes again, he found that his position had changed. The blue sky had turned blood red, and the white clouds had turned blood red. What was even more incredible was that a blood-red full moon appeared in the sky. Looking around, the original path had disappeared, and many crosses appeared around, and he was tied to the cross. Namikaze Minato looked at everything in front of him and asked curiously, is this the strongest mental illusion, Tsukuyomi? Minato was not nervous at all. It would be better to say that Minato knew how to break it. As long as the pupil power of the person who was in the illusion was higher than that of the user, the illusion of Tsukuyomi could be broken. Another way is that if the chakra of one's own is much higher than that of the caster, one can also rely on one's own chakra to break through the illusion. What is more important is that illusions such as Tsukuyomi are aimed at the mental system, and his power as the soul of the god of death is much higher than that of Uchiha Itachi. To put it bluntly, Uchiha Itachi's Tsukuyomi has no effect on Minato at all. At this time, Uchiha Itachi's cold voice sounded, and then a figure appeared. On the countless crosses, the figure of Namikaze Minato appeared, but he was just tied to the cross. Then, in front of each Minato, the figure of Uchiha Itachi appeared, holding a long sword. He spoke indifferently, time and space will become meaningless here. Everything here is under my control. You will be tortured by me for 3 days and 3 nights here, but only 1 second has passed outside. Minato was speechless when he heard this. Is he still pretending? Then, Uchiha Itachi's pair of scarlet Mangekyo Sharingan was seen, staring at Minato who was tied to the cross. He asked, who are you, and what is your purpose in following us? Minato wanted to laugh when he heard this, and said in a cold tone, what a joke. I just bumped into you by accident, and I followed you. As he spoke, Namikaze Minato's tone became as cold as a knife. Do you know who helped you open these eyes? You are an idiot with an underdeveloped cerebellum. Uchiha Shisui helped you open the Mangekyo Sharingan so that you could kill your own people and your parents, you idiot. As he said this, Namikaze Minato's eyes had already turned into blood-red 3 Magatama Sharingan, and Uchiha Itachi's breathing became a little hurried when he saw this. He clearly remembered that he and the masked man who called himself Uchiha Madara massacred the Uchiha clan on the night of the genocide. There were no survivors. Did I also finish off the enemy at that time? If there was a survivor, it would be his younger brother Uchiha Sasuke, but could Sasuke become so strong in such a short time? Obviously impossible. Minato Namikaze noticed Uchiha Itachi's current state and couldn't help but burst out laughing. So your tolerance is just like this? I thought you would still be expressionless. Uchiha Itachi's face was gloomy when he heard this. He decided to torture this guy and then cut this damn guy into pieces. After all, this guy was so annoying that he actually rubbed salt into his wounds. Then Uchiha Itachi's angry expression on his face gradually subsided and turned into an indifferent look. He said in a cold tone full of murderous intent. I don't care if you are a survivor of the Uchiha clan, I just want to kill you. When Minato heard this, his face under the mask gradually darkened, and he said in a cold voice, Are you sure you can kill me with your ability? Then the next moment, the 3 Magatama Sharingan in Minato's eyes spun wildly, forming the shape of a 4-cornered shuriken. Uchiha Itachi's brain short-circuited when he saw this scene, and he couldn't help but exclaim a Mangekyo Sharingan, and then asked, How do you have a Mangekyo Sharingan? It's no wonder that Uchiha Itachi lost his composure. Except for Uchiha Sasuke and Uchiha Obito, there are basically no other members of the Uchiha clan. Now suddenly there is a guy with a Mangekyo Sharingan, and the Mangekyo Sharingan is exactly the same as Shisui's. If Uchiha Itachi didn't have the Mangekyo Sharingan given to him by his friend Uchiha Shisui, Uchiha Itachi would have suspected whether the masked man in front of him was Uchiha Shisui in disguise. Then, the battle changed, and Uchiha Itachi faced the opponent's extremely strange Mangekyo. He felt dizzy and opened his eyes again, and saw himself tied to a cross. The masked man appeared where he had stood before. At the same time, Uchiha Itachi was surprised to find that the other all of them were tied to the cross, and the other party was holding a long knife. At this moment, Uchiha Itachi was completely stunned, his face was a little ugly, and he was extremely shocked. He couldn't help but think in his heart. This guy's pupil power and chakra are better than his own. He also believes that the guy in front of him is definitely not Shisui, because he saw Shisui commit suicide with his own eyes. Itachi saw the other party holding a long knife and walking towards him. He panicked for no reason and asked hurriedly, What are you going to do? What am I going to do? Of course, I'm going to let you taste the taste of slow slicing. As Minato's voice fell, it came. Puff. 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 This sound lasted for 3 days and 3 nights in the Tsukimi world. The illusion was automatically lifted, and Uchiha Itachi fainted and fell to the ground. Seeing this, Hoshigaki Kisame hurriedly helped Uchiha Itachi up and checked him. Seeing that Uchiha Itachi just fainted, he breathed a sigh of relief. At this time, the system's voice sounded, Ding, congratulations on finding the sign-in target Uchiha Itachi, do you want to sign in? Minato was a little happy to hear that he came out just to sign in, and hurriedly said, System sign in. Ding, sign in successfully, congratulations to the host for obtaining the Mangekyo Sharingan, it is detected that the host already has the Mangekyo Sharingan and is helping the host to merge. As soon as the system's voice fell, Minato felt a burst of warmth flowing through his eyes, and then he felt a huge amount of pupil power pouring into his eyes. Minato now has 2 more lines on his Mangekyo Sharingan, and the original 4-cornered shuriken shape is gradually shrinking and wrapped by a 5-pointed star. Minato felt that there were 2 more pupil techniques in his eyes, ninjutsu amplification and ninjutsu conversion. Minato looked at these 2 pupil techniques. Ninjutsu amplification can increase the ninjutsu released by himself by dozens of times, and ninjutsu conversion is to absorb the opponent's attack and convert it into his own energy and release it. Minato was a little surprised when he heard this. Isn't this similar to the Rinnegan technique of Otsutsuki Mamashiki, Geo Huankenlingzuan? At this time, Hoshigaki Kisame, who was standing by, felt the changes in Minato and couldn't help cursing, Uchiha Itachi is an idiot. Don't you even look at the opponent's strength before you attack. Fuck. Now the opponent's aura is so strong. At this time, Minato opened his eyes, and a pair of scarlet Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan released a breathtaking and strange red light.